It began on a frozen night in Willow Creek, Colorado. A Marine bled quietly behind the wheel of a government SUV, his loyal German Shepherd howling for help. No backup came. No headlights pierced the snow. Only an 8-year-old girl walking home alone stopped to listen. What she did next would defy every rule, every fear, and every limitation of her small hands. This is the story of courage born in silence of a child who took the wheel when no one else could. Stay until the end, you won't forget it. Like, subscribe, and share this story if you still believe in miracles made of loyalty and faith. The horn blared without pause, a single cry tunneling through the winter stillness of Willow Creek, Colorado. Streetlights flickered in soft halos, their glow swallowed by snow that fell in fine, endless sheets. 8-year-old Emma Clark trudged home from the church aftercare hall, her backpack swinging against her spine, coat too large for her thin frame. The sound reached her first, an unbroken honk that carried like a distress signal no one was answering. She turned onto Maple Street, scanning the empty sidewalks until she saw it. A gray SUV angled half into a snowbank, headlights cutting across the falling white. Steam rose from the hood. The horn didn't stop. Emma hesitated. The houses were dark, the diner on the corner already closed, the gas station light blinking far down the block. She swallowed her fear and stepped off the curb. Snow crunched beneath her boots as she crept toward the vehicle. "Hello." Her small voice vanished beneath the horn. Through the fogged window, she saw a man slumped over the steering wheel, shoulders, broad head pressed into the horn. His dark hair fell over his forehead, and on his shoulder bloomed a spreading stain the color of rust. Her mittened hand brushed the glass. "Sir." No response. Another sound reached her, a low bark, muffled but fierce. Emma peered closer and saw behind the partition a German Shepherd standing, rigid eyes lit amber by the dashboard. His name tag glinted, Coda. The dog barked again, pawing, the great gaze fixed first on the man, then on her. It wasn't aggression. It was a plea. Heart pounding, Emma tugged the driver's door. It opened with a groan. Warm air and the metallic scent of blood washed out into the cold. The horn's scream filled her ears. Reaching over the man's shoulder, she pushed gently against his arm until his head slid off the wheel. The horn cut off, leaving a silence so deep she could hear her pulse. The man's tags clinked faintly against his collar. Logan Reed, USMC. She placed trembling fingers to his neck. A pulse. Weak, but alive. "It's okay," she whispered, though she wasn't sure for whom she said it. Coda let out a soft whine, pushing his muzzle through the opening between the seats, his breath warm on her sleeve. His steady eyes seemed to ask her to keep going. On the console lay a phone screen glowing with a half-typed message. "They found me." It hadn't been sent. The words tightened something inside her chest. Whoever they were, they might still be close. She glanced toward the vacant lot across the street. For a moment she thought she saw movement, a shadow shifting behind the snowbank, but the wind took the shape away. Emma looked back at the Marine. His skin was pale, his breathing shallow uniform torn where the wound had bled through. He wasn't just hurt. He'd been attacked. The radio beside him hissed a burst of static followed by clipped military code, Sierra Actual. "Do you copy then?" Silence. Not police radio. Military. She knew the hospital wasn't far, 2 miles west past the bridge and up the hill, but 2 miles on foot in a storm with a bleeding man. Impossible. She stared at the steering wheel, almost as big as her torso. The key was still in the ignition. She remembered her mother's voice. "If something ever feels wrong, do something right." She climbed into the seat. The belt cut across her neck. Her boots barely reached the pedals. The dashboard glowed with a steady amber light reflecting her small face in the windshield. "I'm going to help you," she said quietly to the unconscious Marine, and the words steadied her hands. Coda barked once short and certain as if giving permission. Emma twisted the key. The engine rumbled back to life. The radio snapped again, garbled words, then a pause before going dead. She eased her foot down on the brake, shifted into drive. The SUV rolled forward, tires biting into the snow. The steering wheel shook under her grip. The town slid past in ghostly shapes, mailboxes, fences, shuttered stores. Her heart pounded loud enough to feel. Out of the corner of her eye, she caught a flash of movement, the faint outline of a figure watching from behind a lamppost. She didn't look again. She pressed the gas just enough to move faster. The world outside the windshield narrowed into white tunnels of light. "We're going to make it," she whispered, unsure if she meant him, the dog, or herself. Beside her, Coda pressed his nose against her shoulder. She reached down briefly, fingers brushing his fur. The warmth of his body grounded her. Ahead, the road curved toward the bridge, the first real test of whether this wild, impossible choice could work. Behind them, the horn's echo faded into the storm. Ahead waited the long stretch of night and the faint, steady promise of St. Mary's Hospital. Snow fell thicker as Emma Clark guided the SUV through the dim streets of Willow Creek. The headlights carved pale tunnels into the white, and the wipers squeaked in slow, tired arcs. The world outside was shrinking into silence. Inside, the air smelled faintly of metal leather and something warm fading. Beside her, Sergeant Logan Reed slumped in his seat, blood seeping through his sleeve, his breath shallow but steady. Coda, the German shepherd, sat behind the barrier ears, high eyes fixed on the road ahead. Every few seconds he gave a low huff, like he understood how fragile the moment was. Emma's hands trembled around the steering wheel. Her boots barely touched the pedals. She leaned forward, chin high enough just to see over the dash. The hospital couldn't be far. She'd seen the sign once from the bus window. St. Mary's Hospital. 2 miles. 2 miles felt like forever. A burst of static from the radio startled her. Then a voice, calm, clipped firm. "Tango 7, this is command. Confirm position." The words didn't sound like police. She waited for another call, and it came again. "Asset compromised." "Repeat compromised. Do not engage civilians." The line went dead. Emma's heart pounded. She didn't know what all those words meant, but compromised sounded dangerous. Civilians meant people like her. She looked at the man beside her. His tag read, U.S. Marine Corps. He wasn't a policeman. He was a soldier. And whatever had happened tonight wasn't an accident. She pressed the brake as she neared an intersection, glancing through the snowy glass. Nothing moved. The town looked frozen in place. She eased forward again, steering as gently as she could. The SUV felt like a living thing, heavy and breathing, groaning against the cold. Coda let out a deep growl that rolled through the cabin. Emma looked in the rearview mirror. Between the flickers of falling snow, she caught a dark shape. Someone walking along the sidewalk far behind them, keeping the same slow pace as the vehicle. Her mouth went dry. Maybe it was just a late-night traveler. But when she turned the corner, the shape turned too. She whispered, "It's okay. It's okay, though." Her pulse said otherwise. At the next red light, she risked another glance. The shadow stopped when she stopped. Coda's growl deepened, his fur bristling. "You see him too," she murmured. The light turned green and she pressed the gas. The shadow stayed distant but constant. She couldn't stop now. Logan Reed stirred beside her. His head shifted and his lips moved. Bridge. Side road. Not main. He breathed words barely there. She looked at him, startled. "You're awake." But his eyes had already closed. Bridge. Side road, she repeated softly. She remembered the town map at School Main Street led straight to the hospital, bright and open. The old side road wound along the river, darker but quieter. Maybe he knew they were being followed. Maybe he was telling her how to survive. She turned at the next sign for Riverbend Road. The SUV jolted as it hit deeper snow. Streetlights grew sparser, shadows stretched longer. The storm swallowed sound until even the tires felt muted. For a moment, she thought the follower was gone. Then, in the mirror, twin pinpricks of light appeared. Headlights dimmed, keeping distance. Her heart thudded. It wasn't a patrol car. She pressed the accelerator gently. The SUV responded with a low growl. The lights behind her grew closer, steady, patient. She whispered, "Please, go away." But the lights didn't fade. "Coda," she said softly, "we have to be smart." The shepherd barked once, a short sound that filled the silence like a promise. Emma took the next side lane sharply, pretending to turn right, then swerved left behind a row of abandoned warehouses. The other headlights sped past the intersection, missing her turn. "Yes," she breathed, clutching the wheel tighter. Snow sprayed off the tires as she navigated the narrow lane. The buildings loomed like sleeping giants, their windows boarded roofs sagging under white weight. Coda settled tail, thumping once as if to say she'd done well. She slowed, catching her breath. The road curved toward the bridge, its iron frame ghostly under the drifting snow. The river below was nearly frozen black water glinting between sheets of ice. The SUV's wheels rattled over the grating. Halfway across the radio crackled again. Tango 7 status unknown. Possible pursuit. Emma swallowed. Whoever spoke was looking for this man, maybe trying to help. Maybe not. She leaned closer to the radio. We're going to the hospital," she whispered, though no one could hear. Logan groaned softly, his head lolling. She steadied him with one hand and whispered, "It's okay. We're almost there." On the far side of the bridge, the wind caught harder, rocking the SUV. Snow danced across the hood like sparks. The headlights picked up a faint green sign ahead St. Mary's, 1.2 miles. Relief stung her eyes. "One more mile. We can make it," she said, voice breaking a little. The dog gave a quiet, low bark, eyes fixed forward. Behind them, the road lay empty for now. She didn't know if the shadow would return or if someone else waited at the hospital, but she knew she couldn't stop. She tightened her grip on the wheel and kept driving a small child steering a wounded Marine and his loyal dog through the storm, her courage louder than the wind. The storm thickened until the headlights were swallowed whole. Emma Clark leaned forward, small hands gripping the wheel as the SUV pushed through the snow. Wind howled against the metal frame, shaking it like something alive. Beside her, Sergeant Logan Reed was pale, his breath shallow and uneven. Blood soaked the edge of his sleeve. Behind them, Coda, the German shepherd, sat alert, his eyes glinting in the rearview mirror. Every few minutes he growled low, warning her of things she could not see. The radio hissed softly, fading in and out. The words "asset compromised" still echoed in Emma's head. Whoever had hurt this man wasn't gone. She pressed the gas lightly, guiding the heavy vehicle up the narrow hill toward the bridge. The wipers fought to keep the glass clear. A fine crack appeared on the windshield near the top corner, small and harmless at first. Then, as the SUV jolted over uneven snow, it spread like a web. Emma squinted and froze. The crack widened around a tiny, dark circle, a bullet hole. Her stomach dropped. The edges were clean, not frosted, still fresh. Someone had fired at the vehicle recently, maybe just before she found him. That meant whoever did it could still be nearby. She glanced through the window, but the storm had erased everything beyond a few yards. Even the houses looked like ghost outlines. The snow wasn't just falling anymore, it was swallowing. Coda rose on his paws, nose pressed against the grate, staring toward the passenger side. A soft rumble filled his chest. "What is it?" she whispered. He didn't bark. He didn't need to. The message was clear danger. Logan stirred beside her, his head rolling toward the window. His lips moved. "Don't Go, Maine. His voice cracked, then steadied. Ambush. They wait. Bridgeside Road. The words came like fragments of a dream, but they made her heart race. Bridgeside Road, she repeated, gripping the wheel tighter. She remembered the map she'd seen once in class. Main Street cut straight through downtown, bright, open, easy. The side road ran along the river. If he said ambush, that meant the ones who shot him were still out there waiting on the main route. She turned the wheel, steering toward Riverbend Road. The path was darker and rougher, flanked by warehouses and old fences. The snow here was untouched, the road narrow. We'll go this way, she whispered. Coda's tail brushed the barrier as if approving. A sudden flash cut through the snow, a glint too bright, too quick. The next second came a sharp metallic ping against the guardrail. Emma gasped. That sound was not ice. It was a bullet striking steel. She ducked instinctively, heart hammering, and slammed her foot on the gas. The SUV lurched forward, tires spinning before gripping again. Coda barked once, short and fierce, his body pressed against the grate. Hold on, she cried. The Marine groaned softly, his body shifting with the motion. The bridge rose ahead, its iron frame barely visible through the blizzard. She could feel eyes on her, though she couldn't see them. Her pulse pounded loud enough to drown the wind. Another flash lit the snow to her left, then vanished. A bullet struck the road ahead, sparks scattering. She tightened her grip and drove straight through the curtain of white. The SUV fishtailed for a moment, tires sliding over ice. Come on, she whispered, turning the wheel gently the way she imagined her mother would. The vehicle straightened and she kept pushing forward. The world had narrowed to noise, the hum of the engine, the dog's growl, the rasp of her own breath. The far end of the bridge appeared suddenly, its exit framed in swirling snow. She didn't look back. She couldn't. The attackers were behind them now, or maybe just ghosts of fear. She only knew that stopping meant dying. As the SUV cleared the bridge, the tires found better traction, and the sound of pursuit faded. She slowed just enough to breathe. Logan's head leaned against the seat, his skin still pale but warm under her touch. We made it, she whispered, voice trembling. Coda gave one soft bark, his gaze fixed on the road ahead. The snow eased slightly, and in the distance, through the fog of falling flakes, a faint glow shimmered the edge of town, maybe the outskirts of the hospital district. She didn't know if those lights meant safety or another trap, but it was the only way forward. We keep going, she said quietly. No stopping. The dog lowered his head as if he understood. The storm closed behind them, covering their tracks. The SUV rolled into the blinding white, carrying a wounded Marine, a loyal dog, and a child who refused to let fear decide their fate. The bridge rose from the storm like a steel skeleton, its beams coated with ice and snow. Emma Clark slowed the SUV, her small hands tight on the wheel. The wind howled against the frame, making the structure hum. Sergeant Logan Reed slumped beside her, pale and still, while Coda, the German shepherd, stood rigid behind the barrier, ears pricked. His low growl vibrated through the silence, warning her before she even saw what was wrong. Ahead, a red light blinked above a metal gate at the bridge's entrance. A loud mechanical clang followed, and suddenly a thick steel barrier arm dropped down across the road. Emma gasped and slammed the brake. The SUV slid on the ice before stopping inches from the arm. No, please, no, she whispered. The red light pulsed steadily, reflecting on her frozen hands. The sign on the side read, Maintenance Gate Automatic Closure During Storms. The system had activated itself, sealing them on the near side of the bridge. She looked behind, but the road had already vanished into the storm. They were trapped between white and steel. Panic pressed at her chest, but she forced herself to breathe. There has to be a way, she murmured. Her eyes caught a small metal box attached to a post by the gate and access panel. She threw open the door and stumbled into the freezing wind. Snow stung her face like sand. Her boots slipped as she fought her way to the box. Inside was a lever labeled Emergency Release. She tugged hard, but it wouldn't move. Her fingers, numb with cold, found the latch that locked it and pulled again with all her strength. The lever jerked halfway, then gave with a metallic groan. The barrier creaked, then began to rise. Emma turned back toward the car, shivering but relieved. Then she froze. Kota was barking furiously, claws scraping the floorboard, eyes fixed on something far ahead. She followed his gaze through the snow and saw it at the far end of the bridge, just visible through the flurries, sat another SUV, black engine off, no lights. It hadn't been there before. The outline was unmistakable, waiting in silence like a predator. Emma's breath hitched. "Someone's there," she whispered. She ran back to the car and climbed inside, heart hammering. The Marine stirred faintly, mumbling something she couldn't make out. "What do I do?" she whispered to herself. Kota's growl deepened. His gaze locked forward, tail stiff, fur bristling. Then the Marine's voice rasped weakly beside her. "Lights off." Just 2 words, but enough. Emma understood instantly. If the enemy was waiting, light would betray them. Her hands shook as she turned the headlights off. Darkness swallowed them. The only glow came from the faint red light of the rising gate and the dim flicker of the dashboard. The bridge ahead was now a tunnel of white fog. "We're going to roll," she said softly, hands gripping the wheel. She eased her foot off the brake. The SUV began to glide forward, slow and nearly silent, the tires whispering against the steel grating. The sound of the wind masked their movement. Her pulse thundered in her ears. The dark SUV ahead remained still, its outline shifting faintly behind the snow. Every inch forward felt like a mile. "Please don't see us," she whispered. Kota stayed quiet now, his eyes fixed on the shape ahead, body tense. The Marine muttered again, voice broken but clear enough to reach her keep low. She ducked instinctively, chin near the wheel, eyes on the faint white line of the bridge's edge. The air felt electric, like the moment before thunder. The other SUV didn't move. Maybe the storm was hiding them. Maybe luck was. When she reached the middle of the bridge, she pressed the gas lightly, praying the sound wouldn't carry. The vehicle rolled forward smooth but heavy. The red light from the maintenance arm flickered behind, fading into fog. Then, just as the front tires touched the final section of steel, a faint reflection flashed in the dark SUV's windshield movement. Emma's heart stopped. She slammed her foot down. The engine roared, tires slipping, then caught traction. The SUV lunged forward, the force throwing her back against the seat. Kota barked once, loud and fierce. As they shot past, she saw the silhouette of a man turning his head inside the parked vehicle. But before anything else happened, the storm closed around them again. The bridge disappeared behind a wall of snow. The tires found pavement, and she kept pressing the pedal until the red lights of the bridge faded completely. Only then did she let out the breath she'd been holding. "We made it," she whispered, voice trembling but sure. Kota looked back through the rear window, his body still tense. The Marine had fallen unconscious again, but his chest rose and fell steadily. Emma kept her eyes on the faint glow ahead, the hospital district less than a mile away. The storm might return, and the danger behind might follow, but for now, they were alive. She tightened her grip on the wheel, determination shining in her small, frightened eyes. "We keep moving," she murmured. "No stopping now." The storm began to thin as Emma Clark guided the SUV down from the bridge. The air still shimmered with snow, but the flakes had grown lighter, swirling like ghosts in the headlights. The hospital's glow flickered faintly in the distance, maybe a mile away, maybe less. Sergeant Logan Reed lay slumped beside her, his breathing steady but shallow, his uniform darkened by blood now dried and cracked from the cold. Kota, the German shepherd, sat upright behind her, his head hovering near her shoulder, watchful as ever. The road curved through the outskirts of town, narrow and coated with ice. Emma's small hands clenched the wheel, her shoulders tense. The silence was heavy, broken only by the low hum of the engine. She glanced once more into the rearview mirror. Nothing followed. For the first time in what felt like forever, she exhaled a full breath. Then came the sound, faint at first, but growing the wail of a siren. It rose and fell in the distance, echoing through the frozen streets like a ghostly cry. Emma's eyes widened with relief. "Police?" she whispered, tears threatening to break free. Help had found them at last. She flicked her headlights twice, trying to signal. A few seconds later, blue and red lights pierced through the snow ahead, bouncing off the white drifts. The SUV slowed automatically, as if surrendering. The siren faded as the other vehicle rolled closer, parking across the road with practiced precision. Emma's pulse slowed. It was over. They were safe. The thought lasted only a second. Coda's growl shattered the moment, deep, steady, not afraid but certain. Emma frowned, staring through the windshield. The police cruiser looked right at first glance, the familiar shape, the flashing lights, but something felt wrong. The markings on the side read Willow County Sheriff, but the font was off, the numbers uneven. Even the shield logo looked different, smaller, like a copy that didn't belong. Her heart stuttered. "No," she whispered. She leaned forward and squinted. The tag number on the bumper had 4 digits, but every real local patrol car she'd seen outside her mother's diner had 5. The wrong kind of tires, the wrong lights, and no radio antenna on top. Whoever they weren't law enforcement. The driver's door opened slowly. A man stepped out, his outline tall and heavy beneath the red-blue glare. He moved like he belonged in uniform, but the way his head turned, scanning the road, was sharp and deliberate, the movement of someone hunting, not helping. Emma froze, every instinct screaming. Coda's growl deepened, ears flat, ready to spring. The man raised one hand, palm out, a gesture that should have been reassuring. "You're okay," he shouted over the wind. But even from inside, Emma could hear it. No radio crackle at his shoulder, no badge glint on his chest. She didn't wait for more. "Hold on," she whispered to the Marine and the dog. Her hands gripped the wheel, her foot slammed the gas. The SUV swerved, tires screeching against the frozen pavement. The false officer jerked back as the headlights caught his face, clean-shaven, unfamiliar eyes, too calm. A second figure appeared from the passenger side of the fake cruiser, reaching for something metallic. Emma didn't look twice. The SUV shot forward, skidding around the corner. The lights of the fake police car flared behind her, turning into pursuit. She turned down the next side street, snow spraying in a glittering arc. Her heart hammered in her throat. "We have to hide," she murmured. "They can't see us." Coda barked once, sharp and low. His body shifted toward the window, nose pressed to the glass as if guiding her. Ahead to the left, an alley split between 2 abandoned warehouses, narrow, half-buried in snowdrifts. Without thinking, Emma turned the wheel sharply and slid into it. The SUV jolted but held steady. She drove as far as she could until the headlights hit a wall of crates near the back fence. Then she killed the engine, heart pounding. Silence fell like a blanket. She flicked off the interior lights and whispered, "Shh." The only sound was wind slipping through cracks in the walls. Outside, tires crunched slowly on the main road. The glow of flashing red-blue lights washed faintly through the alley entrance, painting the snow in eerie color. Coda stayed still, muscles rigid, eyes locked on the light outside. Emma pressed herself low against the seat, her breath fogging the glass. She could hear the faint hum of the fake cruiser idling close by the engine, deep and steady. For a moment, a beam of light swept across the alley, mouth a searchlight. It cut through the snow, slicing toward their hiding place. Emma froze, every nerve burning. The beam stopped inches from their SUV's bumper. Then it moved away, slow and deliberate, scanning elsewhere. The hum of the engine faded. The false police car rolled past, its lights dimming into the storm. Emma didn't breathe until the glow disappeared completely. Her hands shook as she turned to Coda. "We're okay," she whispered. The shepherd finally relaxed, lowering his head into her lap, his breath warm against her arm. Logan Reed stirred faintly, his voice dry but conscious. "Not police," he rasped. "Good instincts." Emma smiled weakly, tears blurring her vision. "I just got lucky," she said. But deep down she knew it wasn't luck. It was courage born from desperation. The road ahead was still dark, but the hospital was close, and now she knew the truth. Not everyone wearing a badge was there to help. The storm had softened into a cold whisper when Emma Clark finally saw the red glow of St. Mary's Hospital through the snow. The sight pulled a shaky breath from her chest. The parking lot lights flickered through the haze, glinting off the snow like faint stars. Her fingers ached from gripping the steering wheel too long. Sergeant Logan Reed was fading, his lips pale, his pulse weaker than before. Coda, the German shepherd, pressed his muzzle to the man's arm, whining low as if urging him to hold on. "Almost there," Emma whispered. She followed the sign marked "Emergency Entrance Tires," slipping on the frozen pavement. The automatic doors ahead glowed red under the storm lights. When she reached them, she hit the brake too hard and the SUV skidded before stopping at the curb. "We made it," she breathed. Then she pushed the gear into park, unbuckled, and scrambled around to the passenger side. The hospital doors slid open, releasing a wave of warm air. 2 staff members rushed out, a nurse and an orderly, their expressions turning from confusion to alarm as they saw the wounded Marine. "Get a stretcher now," the nurse shouted. She was tall, mid-30s, hair tied in a bun badge, reading Nurse Claire Simmons. Her eyes moved quickly from Emma to Logan, then to the blood-soaked sleeve. "What happened here?" she demanded. "He's hurt." Emma gasped, her breath forming little clouds. "He needs help." Claire climbed into the SUV without hesitation, checking Logan's pulse, then looking up in disbelief. "This man's a Marine," she said, recognizing the uniform and the name tag. "But he's active duty. He shouldn't even be here without an escort." "Who brought him?" Emma swallowed. "Me." The nurse froze for half a heartbeat, eyes searching the child's pale face for a lie. There was none. "How far did you drive?" "From Maple Street," Emma whispered. Claire's voice softened just a little. "You did good, honey. Really good. Let's get him inside." The stretcher rolled up wheels, squeaking on ice. The orderly helped lift Logan from the seat. His body sagged in their hands, heavy and cold, but still alive. Coda jumped down after him, circling close, refusing to be left behind. "It's okay, boy," Claire murmured, one hand steadying the dog. "He's coming with us." As they rushed inside, Emma followed her boots squeaking against the wet floor. The bright hospital light burned her eyes after so long in the dark. The scent of antiseptic and coffee filled the air. Nurses called out orders. A doctor appeared, tall, dark-haired, name tag reading Dr. Michael Alvarez, and immediately took over. "Gunshot wound left shoulder," Claire reported. "Possible hypothermia. Kid brought him in." Alvarez looked at Emma for a brief second, something like awe in his eyes, before focusing on his patient. "Let's move." They wheeled Logan down the hall toward Trauma Bay 2. Coda followed at their heels, his paws clicking against the tile. Emma stopped near the waiting area, her legs trembling. Claire crouched beside her. "You're safe now, sweetheart," she said. But the words didn't sound as certain as they should have. The nurse kept glancing at the hallway where they'd taken Logan. Her face was thoughtful, unsettled. "You said his name was Logan Reed?" "Yes." Emma nodded. Claire's brows drew together. "I've seen his file before. He's active, stationed out of Camp Pendleton. What's he doing here in Colorado?" The question wasn't really for Emma, but it sank into the air between them like a stone. Whatever this man was, part of it wasn't standard military duty. Emma hugged herself, unsure how to answer. Before Claire could say more, a sharp voice broke over the hospital's intercom. Not the PA system, but a radio frequency carried through a nearby security guard's shoulder mic. "Dispatch. This is Unit 9. We've got movement in the sub-level garage. Possible intruders, vehicle unknown." The nurse's head snapped toward the guard. "What kind of vehicle?" she asked. The guard pressed the mic closer to his ear. "Looks like a police SUV," he said slowly, "but it's not in our system. Wrong numbers on the side." The color drained from Claire's face. She turned back to Emma. "Honey, where exactly did you come from?" Emma's throat tightened. "There was another car," she whispered. "It looked like the police, but it wasn't. I think they followed me." Claire stood, voice low but urgent. "Stay here. Don't move. I'm locking the entrance." She hurried toward the glass doors and hit the security panel beside them. The doors sealed shut, the lights above shifting from green to red. The guard on radio began calling for backup, his voice steady but strained. "Possible armed suspects in the basement level. All units respond." Emma pressed her hands together, heart racing. Coda stayed at her side, his body tense, ears twitching toward every sound. Down the hall, she could still hear muffled voices, Dr. Alvarez giving orders, machines beeping, but the comfort of that rhythm was slipping away. The hospital no longer felt safe. The low hum of the ventilation system seemed too loud, too deliberate. Every sound carried weight now. Claire returned her voice calm but eyes sharp. "We're in lockdown," she told Emma. "You stay with me and the dog. Understand?" Emma nodded, gripping Coda's collar. The German Shepherd pressed against her leg, his gaze fixed toward the corridor that led to the underground levels. Somewhere below, the echo of heavy footsteps reverberated slow, deliberate hunting. The hospital, once a beacon of light, had turned into another battlefield. The hum of fluorescent lights filled the corridor of St. Mary's Hospital, their faint flicker painting the walls in pale, uneasy color. Emma Clark sat beside Coda on a narrow bench, her knees drawn to her chest, the air around her heavy with the sterile scent of antiseptic and fear. Beyond the glass door, Sergeant Logan Reed lay inside the trauma room, while Dr. Alvarez and Nurse Claire Simmons worked with practiced urgency. Machines beeped softly, fragile proof that he was still alive. Outside, 2 detectives had arrived after the lockdown was triggered. They stood near the reception desk, voices hushed but heated. Emma tried not to listen, but their words reached her through the echoing hallway. "He's not supposed to be here, one," said, his tone edged with disbelief. "The Marine Corps listed him on restricted assignment, no civilian movement authorized." The other leaned closer, his whisper sharp. "You think I don't know that he was carrying something encrypted drive classified material? He wasn't on leave. He was transferring evidence." The first detective's voice dropped lower. "Evidence of what?" A pause heavy and deliberate. "Defense contracts, procurement fraud. Someone's been moving weapons inventory off the books and Reed found out. The ambush tonight? It wasn't random. It was containment." Emma's heart tightened. The word echoed in her head, containment. Not rescue, not mistake. It meant someone wanted him silenced. She looked toward the glass door of the trauma bay where the faint shadow of Dr. Alvarez moved behind the curtain. Coda shifted beside her, his ears twitching, nose lifted, as though he sensed what she had only begun to understand, that danger hadn't been left outside in the snow. She pressed her hand against the dog's fur and whispered, "Stay close." Claire appeared in the hallway, face pale but controlled. "He's stable," she said softly, kneeling to Emma's level. "But he lost a lot of blood. We're moving him upstairs once the storm clears." Her voice carried calm, but her eyes betrayed something else, worry and an awareness of what Emma had overheard. "You should rest," Claire added. "You've done enough for one night." Emma nodded, though sleep felt impossible. A sound broke through the silence. Faint static from the security guard's radio. "Basement clear," the voice said, "but we're missing one uniform from the locker storage." Claire stiffened. "One uniform?" she asked aloud. The guard replied, "Yes, ma'am. Set number 3 missing a medical coat and badge." The nurse's expression darkened. She turned quickly to the guard. "Lock the rear stairwell now." He nodded and jogged toward the end of the hall. Claire turned back to Emma, her voice tight. "We need to move somewhere safe. Come with me." She guided Emma and Coda down a side hallway lined with patient rooms. The lights here flickered dimmer, the hum of machines softer. They slipped into a small supply room. The air smelled of disinfectant and metal. "Stay quiet," Claire whispered. "If anything feels wrong, you don't wait for me, you run straight to the ER doors." Emma nodded, clutching Coda's collar. The shepherd's ears flicked forward, his body low but ready. Claire checked the hall once more before leaving the door cracked just enough to see out. For a moment, nothing moved except the rhythmic flicker of lights overhead. Then footsteps. Slow, deliberate echoing down the corridor. A man appeared tall, dressed in a white lab coat, an ID badge swinging from his chest. He walked with purpose, clipboard in hand, glancing briefly into each room as he passed. To anyone else, he would have looked like a doctor. But there was something wrong in the way he moved, too controlled, too methodical. Claire's breath hitched. She stepped back silently, her hand motioning Emma toward the cabinet. Emma understood instantly. She slipped inside, pulling Coda with her. The shepherd followed without sound, pressing against her knees as she closed the cabinet door to a thin crack. The world outside shrank to a sliver of light. Through it, she saw the man stop outside Logan's room. He hesitated, head tilted, then slowly pushed the door open. The faint sound of machines carried through the silence. Claire's hand hovered over the wall, ready to trigger the alarm, but she froze when the man turned his head slightly toward her direction. He had the calm, blank expression of someone trained to notice everything. Emma could feel her heartbeat in her throat. Coda stayed perfectly still, though his body trembled with restrained tension. The fake doctor stepped into the room. Seconds passed like minutes. Then a soft, metallic sound echoed the click of a holster. Emma's stomach clenched. He wasn't holding a stethoscope. Claire's fingers brushed the wall panel, barely breathing. The man lingered, eyes scanning monitors, then leaned closer to the unconscious Marine. He muttered something Emma couldn't hear. After a long pause, he straightened and walked back into the hall. His shoes squeaked faintly against the tile. When his shadow moved past the supply room, Emma stopped breathing. The door handle twitched once, then went still. A beat later, the footsteps resumed, fading toward the elevator. Claire exhaled long and slow, the sound trembling. She opened the cabinet, eyes wide. "We have to move him," she whispered. "He's not safe here." Emma nodded, stepping out with Coda, her hands shaking but ready. Down the hall, the elevator dinged softly, doors opening. The war outside had followed them inside, only now it moved in silence and wore a doctor's coat. The storm outside had quieted to a soft hiss against the hospital windows. Dawn was still far away, but a pale gray light crept through the blinds of Trauma Room 2, brushing across the pale face of Sergeant Logan Reed. His breathing was steadier now, the monitors around him humming in steady rhythm. Emma Clark sat nearby on a metal chair, her fingers buried in Coda's fur. Nurse Claire Simmons stood by the door, speaking quietly to Dr. Alvarez, her voice carrying the edge of exhaustion and worry. "The man in the fake coat hasn't been seen since the lockdown," Alvarez said. Security swept the halls twice. Claire's answer came low. "He's not gone. He's waiting. They always wait." She looked at Logan, her eyes heavy. "We have to know what we're protecting." Logan stirred, eyelids fluttering. Emma leaned forward, her voice barely above a whisper. "You're safe now," she said, though she didn't quite believe it. His eyes opened slowly, clouded at first, then sharpening as memory rushed back. "Where's the SUV?" His voice was hoarse, the question direct. Claire moved closer. "It's outside, guarded by security. You're lucky to be alive, Sergeant. Logan shook his head weakly. Not luck. Interference. He looked toward Emma, a faint smile ghosting his lips. You drove, didn't you? She nodded shyly. You saved my life, he murmured, then grimaced as the pain caught up to him. But it's not over. Claire placed a hand on his shoulder. You need to rest. He ignored her. There's a Drive small silver case hidden behind the rear console in the SUV. Don't let anyone touch it. It's evidence. Claire frowned. Evidence of what? His gaze drifted toward the ceiling as if seeing something far beyond the white tiles. Of a man who lost his honor, he said quietly. My commanding officer, Major Darnell Keene. He left the Corps 5 years ago, joined a defense contractor. Started moving surplus equipment ammunition tech parts through fake channels, selling them off book to private buyers. I found the shipments. I traced the money, and I wasn't supposed to. Claire's breath caught. You mean tonight? They found out? Logan interrupted, his voice thin. I was supposed to deliver the Drive to Internal Affairs at Camp Pendleton. They intercepted me outside the warehouse. The men who shot me were working for him. Emma's small hands clenched in her lap. That's why they followed us, she said softly. Logan's eyes turned toward her, tired but proud. You did what even trained soldiers couldn't. You adapted. Then he looked back at Claire. You have to call someone for me. Her name is Rachel Miller. The name seemed to hang in the air. Claire frowned. Rachel Miller. The diner on Maple Street. Emma's head lifted fast. That's my mom. Logan closed his eyes briefly, exhaling as though the connection gave him strength. Of course, he whispered. You look like her. Claire and Alvarez exchanged a puzzled glance. You know her? The doctor asked. We served together, Logan said slowly. Fallujah, 2004. She was a corpsman braver than half the men in our unit. We made it through because she never broke. His voice softened, memory taking hold. When I came home, I promised her if I ever saw trouble coming, I'd keep her and her kids safe. I never thought that promise would bring her daughter to me in a storm. Emma's eyes filled with tears she didn't understand. You knew my mom before. Logan nodded faintly. She saved my life once, just like you did tonight. Claire straightened, mind already racing. If Rachel Miller was Marine Medical, she might still have contacts at Camp Pendleton. She could get this evidence to the right people. Logan's expression darkened. If she's willing to risk it. Keene has reach. He's buried too many trails. That's why they came for me and why they'll come here next. The monitor beside him beeped faster as the weight of his words settled. Claire looked at Alvarez. We can't keep him here. The hospital's compromised. Alvarez hesitated. Moving him in this condition could kill him. Logan opened his eyes again, steady and sharp despite the pain. If we don't, it won't matter. He'll send another team. He turned his gaze to Claire. Get the Drive. Call Rachel. She'll know what to do. Claire nodded slowly. And if she doesn't answer, Logan's voice dropped gravelly with determination. She will. Marines don't forget their own. Outside the window, the snow began to fall harder again, as if the storm refused to end. Emma reached out her small hand, brushing the Marine's uninjured arm. We'll help her, she said firmly. Coda lifted his head as if echoing the vow. The faint sound of a car door slamming outside broke the fragile calm. Claire moved to the blinds, peering through a thin gap. A black SUV sat idling near the parking lot entrance, its lights off. They found us, she whispered. The hospital, bathed in sterile white, no longer felt like sanctuary. It was simply the next battlefield in a war of secrets that had followed them from the snow into the heart of safety. The low hum of generators vibrated through the underground parking structure beneath St. Mary's Hospital. Fluorescent lights flickered in long, trembling rows, their pale glow reflecting off puddles of melted snow. The storm still howled above, but down here the air was heavy and still, a silence that felt too deliberate. Nurse Claire Simmons led Emma Clark and Coda through a maintenance corridor toward the stairwell. "We need the drive," she whispered. "It's the only thing that can prove what he said." Sergeant Logan Reed lay upstairs, watched by Dr. Alvarez, but his words still echoed in her mind. "Don't let anyone touch that SUV." When they reached the heavy steel door leading to the parking deck, Coda froze. The German Shepherd's body went rigid, tail-stiff ears forward. A low growl rolled from his chest, deep and certain. "What is it?" Emma whispered, gripping his collar. The dog didn't move. His nose lifted slightly, testing the air. Then he took a step forward, pulling against her hold. Claire frowned and peered through the door's narrow glass panel. The parking deck looked empty except for the patrol SUV where they'd left it, now dusted with a thin layer of snow blown in from the open ramp. But then movement. A shadow slipped behind one of the concrete pillars near the vehicle. Someone was down there. Claire's pulse quickened. "Stay behind me," she murmured. She pushed the door open carefully, the metal creaking on its hinges. The sound echoed too loud in the hollow space. Coda moved first, his paws silent against the concrete. He sniffed the air, then bolted toward the SUV, his growl turning into a bark that shattered the stillness. A figure stepped out from behind the pillar, the same man who had worn the fake medical coat. His expression was calm, his hands raised halfway in a mock gesture of peace. "Easy, dog," he said quietly. His voice was smooth, too measured, but Coda wasn't fooled. He barked again, circling closer, teeth bared. The man's eyes flicked to the SUV, then to Claire and Emma emerging from the stairwell. "You shouldn't be here," he said. Claire steadied her voice. "Neither should you. Step away from the vehicle." He didn't move. "There's something in there that doesn't belong to you." Claire took a step forward, her hospital badge trembling slightly in her grip. "You're not with law enforcement," she said. "So, who are you?" His answer came cold. "Clean up." Then he reached into his coat. Coda lunged before he could draw anything. The shepherd's powerful body slammed into the man's arm, teeth clamping down hard. The gun fell clattering across the floor. The man shouted in pain and twisted, but Coda held on, dragging him backward. Claire seized Emma's hand. "Go!" she hissed. They ran to the SUV. The door was still unlocked exactly as they'd left it. Claire reached inside, pulling up the rear console until her fingers brushed metal, a small silver drive case taped beneath the plastic lining. She tore it free and shoved it into her coat. Behind them, Coda released his grip, barking furiously as the man scrambled to his feet and fled toward the far exit. His left arm hung limp, blood streaking his sleeve. He turned once, meeting Emma's eyes across the dim parking lot. There was no fear there, only calculation. Then he disappeared into the shadows. The echo of his footsteps faded, replaced by the faint hum of cameras repositioning above them. Claire looked up. "Security's watching," she said. Moments later, a voice crackled through the hospital's intercom speaker mounted on the wall. "Security to all units, suspect sighted in garage level 2. Copy." They could hear guards moving overhead, boots striking tile. Coda trotted back, panting, muzzle-streaked but proud. "Good boy," Emma whispered, kneeling to hug him. The shepherd licked her glove once, then looked back toward the darkness where the intruder had gone. Upstairs, the control room lit up with alerts. The head of security replayed footage from the parking deck. The grainy image showed the intruder stepping out of a black vehicle parked at the far end of the ramp, a car marked with a discreet logo of Keen Defense Systems. The camera zoomed in on his coat pocket. Inside was a disposable cell phone flashing with an active call. The monitor captured a fragment of the transmission package located. "Contain and extract." The security officer exchanged a glance with another guard. "He's not alone," one whispered. "And that car belongs to a defense contractor. They printed stills of the footage, forwarding them directly to the precinct and federal liaison. Within minutes, the hospital transformed from lockdown to full alert. Police sirens began to converge outside, their echoes merging with the wind. Back in the garage, Claire exhaled, holding the silver case tightly. "We have proof now," she said. "If this gets to the right people, they can't hide anymore." Emma looked up at her eyes wide. "Will they come back?" Claire's voice softened. "They already have." She glanced toward the ramp leading upward, where faint headlights were now cutting through the storm. "We need to move him before they realize what we've found." Coda barked once, sharp and urgent, the sound echoing against the concrete. The next battle wasn't in the snow or the street. It was here beneath the hospital, where light and darkness met in a silent war of truth. Weeks later, the snow along the streets of Willow Creek had melted into gray slush, leaving the town quiet again. The storm was gone, but its echoes lingered in headlines in courtrooms and in the hearts of those who had lived through it. Inside a federal building in Denver, a hearing was underway behind closed doors. The seal of the United States Marine Corps gleamed faintly above the tribunal table. Sergeant Logan Reed sat in uniform, his left arm still bandaged, posture straight but weary. Across from him sat a panel of investigators and military auditors, their folders stacked with documents and digital evidence. The silver hard drive, recovered from the SUV that snowy night, now sat on the table labeled and sealed. Rachel Miller sat quietly in the back row beside her daughter Emma, hands clasped tightly in her lap. Coda, now permitted inside as an official K-9 witness of record, rested at their feet, his amber eyes alert and calm. When the lead investigator asked for his statement, Logan stood. His voice was steady, carrying the quiet authority of someone who had seen both battle and betrayal. "I retrieved evidence showing that Major Darnell Keene used his position within Keene Defense Systems to divert weapons contracts and supply shipments into private markets," he said. "Those funds were used to finance operations without oversight, endangering both servicemen and civilians." He paused, glancing briefly toward Emma and Rachel. "The drive contains transaction logs, communications, and falsified manifests, all recorded during my undercover investigation." One of the panel members, a woman with silver hair and sharp eyes, leaned forward. "And what do you ask in return for this testimony?" Sergeant Reed Logan shook his head. "Nothing for myself." His voice lowered, but each word was deliberate. "I ask only that the department ensures civilian protection for Rachel Miller and her daughter Emma. The child became an accidental witness when she saved my life. And her mother, she deserves the right to live and work without fear of retaliation." The room was silent for a moment, the kind of silence that carries weight. The lead investigator nodded slowly. "That can be arranged." Logan's shoulders eased slightly. "Then my duty's done." He sat down, the faintest relief crossing his face. The proceedings continued for another hour, confirming the evidence and ordering an immediate warrant for Keene's arrest. By evening, the news spread Keene Defense Systems was under federal investigation, and the scandal had broken nationwide. Rachel and Emma watched it unfold from their small living room in Willow Creek. The television glowed soft blue across their faces. Rachel turned the volume down, her voice quiet but full of pride. "He didn't ask for anything," she murmured. Emma nodded, her hand resting on Coda's back. "He just wanted to keep us safe." On the screen, footage showed Logan leaving the courthouse reporters, shouting questions he ignored. The man who had once been hunted now walked freely, not as a hero, but as someone who had fulfilled a promise. A week later, Logan visited their home. The sun had returned, melting the last of the ice from the porches. He wore no medals, no fanfare, just the simple dress blues of a Marine who still lived by the code that had nearly cost him everything. Rachel met him at the door. Her voice caught when she said, "You should have told me you were still fighting their wars." Logan smiled faintly. "Some wars don't end, Rachel. They just change uniforms." Inside, Coda trotted straight to him, tail wagging. Emma stood nearby, clutching a small cell phone, the same one they'd recovered from the SUV. It had belonged to Logan. "It still has one message unsent," she said softly. "You wrote it, but you didn't finish." Logan frowned. "What message?" Emma scrolled to the drafts. On the cracked screen glowed the words, "They found me." His breath caught. "I wasn't sending that to command," he said quietly. "It was for someone else." Rachel tilted her head. "Who?" He looked out the window, eyes distant. "My teammate, Corporal David Shaw. He was killed 2 years ago. They blamed him for the missing inventory Keene was moving. He died a disgraced Marine. I was sending that message to his widow so she'd know the truth, that he wasn't the thief they said he was. He was the one who tried to stop it." Emma looked at him, then at the phone. "Can I send it?" she asked. Logan hesitated, then nodded. "Yes," he whispered. "He deserves that peace." Emma's small thumb pressed send. The message disappeared into silence, carrying its truth into the world like a prayer finally released. No reply came, but none was needed. The three of them stood there, soldier, mother, and child, bound by something deeper than blood, the courage to face the cost of truth. Later at sunset, Logan stood on the porch with Coda beside him. The horizon burned gold over the melting snow. Rachel joined him, her voice soft. "What will you do now?" He watched the sky for a long moment. "Stay in town for a while. Help rebuild what got broken." She smiled, small but real. "You'll always have a place here." Inside, Emma was drawing a Marine, a nurse and a girl holding a leash beside a big German Shepherd under falling snow. Beneath it, she'd written in neat, careful letters, "Courage means never driving alone." And that was the night Courage had a name. A child who refused to look away, a Marine who wouldn't give up, and a loyal dog who never left his side. What would you have done on that cold night in Willow Creek? Would you have stopped, driven that SUV through the storm? Tell me in the comments where you're watching from tonight. I'd love to know how far this story has reached. If this touched your heart, hit like, share it with someone who still believes in loyalty and faith, and make sure to subscribe so you don't miss the next story that reminds us, even in silence, hope still speaks.